Okay, our speaker today is Aimee McConkie, and Aimee is an associate at Foxley and Pignanelli, and that's a hard thing to say, Pignanelli, so there it is. A bipartisan government relations and lobbyist firm in Salt Lake. She also has her own company called Five Stone that does association management. Manages membership and communications, government and public relations, event planning, bookkeeping, and so on. Aimee's also interesting because she's also active in politics and community affairs in her own little part of Salt Lake County. If you're familiar with Mill Creek, they recently became a city and voted to become a city, and Aimee was sort of central to that, behind the scenes, making that happen. Is that fair to say? And she has planned a 4-day film festival called Labeled to break the stigma of mental health. She does a summer film outdoor series in Mill Creek, a festival in Mill Creek every summer, right, that you manage and sort of produce. Is that? And so she does a lot of community things, and I find her interesting, and I think you might find her interesting also because she manages to do this with kids and a marriage, and I find it fascinating. I know Aimee pretty well and have met her husband a few times. He's a divorce attorney, and it's really good for, as a wake-up call once in a while to talk to a divorce attorney as a man, to hear him say, you know, every single time, this is what I hear, and this is what I see. Here's a pattern I see, in case you're wondering, you know, like, oh, I recognize that. Maybe I should, you know, shape up and make some changes. So that's another fun thing about Aimee, that she's married to a divorce attorney that probably is better, a better husband and father for it. But I've made some mental notes as I've hung around them a little bit. Anyway, without further ado, let me introduce Aimee McConkie.
Set up here. Get things arranged. Just a second. Let's see. Whoops, hold on. Okay, well, with that introduction, I should tell you the benefit of being the wife of a divorce attorney. So the bar is set super low for me. Like, he's just so grateful every day. I mean, he's on the phone all day talking to people, and he's like, I am just so grateful that you have not had an affair today. I am so grateful that you have not spent all of our money. I am so grateful, blah, 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 blah. So the bar is set super low for me, so I can, you know, it just doesn't matter what I do. So, you know, so that's the benefit of being married to a divorce attorney. So the first thing I want to tell you about is that today we're going to talk about the career of association management, and I'm going to tell you some background of how I've gotten into this career and what I have done that way. Let's see, that clicker, okay. So associations, so there's tons of names for associations. You can see special interest groups, unions, alliance, league, guild, federation, organization, nonprofit, club, society. And I'm sure there is a ton more. These are all names that we have heard. Some names, specifically, I like the name special interest group. Special interest group sometimes has a very bad connotation to it, that those special interest groups are up in Washington, D.C., and they are just wrecking and making havoc, right? The thing is everyone has somebody up there representing them, your interest, whether you even know that that there's a group that exists. You've got the automobile group that are out there protecting those people that own cars. You've got transportation for mass transit up there that are protecting those people that like to be riders. So every single one of you has interests that are special interest, and they are up there pretty much at the Capitol. And if they're not, their issue is probably not that important. So anyway, so I think it's very fascinating to see all the different things for associations. Out of curiosity, are you guys familiar with associations and association management? Does anybody belong to any associations currently? Which one do you belong to?
The American Political Science Association.
Yeah, how could you not belong to that? So out of curiosity, how many are you political science majors? Pretty much all of you. Okay. So are you familiar with this world of associations and special interests, correct? Okay. So this is the science behind it. Now I put this picture in here. Now you probably can't see from that big one, but there's a kind of a looming ghost above it. There's a head. It's my father-in-law. So he was scanning in pictures and took this picture, took it with his phone and then sent it to me. And this is me upon my graduation here at BYU, getting my master's degree. And he sent this to me about a year ago, and what I thought was fascinating about it is that the person I'm receiving my diploma from is Kelly Patterson. And at the time, I had never taken a class from Kelly. I didn't know who Kelly was. He was just the guy that was going to, shake my hand across, walking across that big stage. What's fun is fast forward, I have now had the opportunity to meet with Quinn and Kelly with some other things that we've been working on with different organizations, and it's been super fun to meet Kelly. So when I saw this, I was like, isn't that a small world? So I put that in here. But I am a BYU alum, and proud of it. And let's see here. Oops. Anyway, so that was a fun day. So after I graduated, when I was still getting my degree, I started applying for internships. And the specific one was with Foxley Pignanelli. And they are a government relations firm up in Salt Lake. They are kind of a bipartisan group. One's a Democrat, one's a Republican, and started working for this firm as an intern. And then as the internship ended, they hired me on afterwards. And I learned some things from that internship and even from that work experience. First of all, I do not like lobbying. But they are super useful to have in association management. But lobbying was hard for me because it is very much a hurry up and then wait game. So during this session, which was only 45 days in Utah, as I was up there, I'd sit in the hall and you just kind of wait till the next thing happens, and you're waiting, and then you're trying to get a meeting with this person, a meeting with that person, but then you're waiting. And it drove me crazy just to sit there. And so I realized quickly that that was not the part that I liked. And I didn't like that it felt like there was this kind of social game that was getting played at the same time. So, but there was other things that I really did like about the experience I had. One is I learned a lot about campaigns. I learned about campaign initiatives. I learned about associations. And at the end, I really understood my passion was I love advocacy. I love rooting for something. I love working for something. I love being part of a team. And so those were all things that I was able to get with association management. Oops. So then my husband decided to get his master's degree in organizational behavior, so we headed out to Connecticut. So my husband and I went down there, and I showed up in Connecticut and started applying for jobs. And luck would have it, I landed at the Connecticut Credit Union League. And there I did public relations. I did a little bit of government relations, but mostly public relations, communications, marketing. And the goal of it, and it was a staff of 13, and the goal is to represent the interests of the different credit unions that exist in Connecticut. And it was interesting to me to see, because in Utah, I don't know who's from Utah, but credit unions were really popular. Everyone knew what a credit union was. And then ironically, going to Connecticut, I saw that very few people knew what a credit union was and what a credit union did. And that was interesting to me because you can see that one organization was stronger in one state versus another state. And so I enjoyed kind of seeing that and seeing the marketing and public relations. Also in Connecticut, we had our first child. Her name's Ava. And so that was really fun, but I was really kind of torn about having a child because I was working, my husband was at school, and he was like, look, Aimee, I'll take care of the baby. And I was like, okay, so we'll do this. Because as you know, in the culture, it was, you should stay at home, you should be a mom, this is what you should do. And so it felt like we were kind of taking off a little bit by me working and Bryant staying home with our daughter. So at the end, Bryant decides that he wants to do more school and wants to go to law school because he really likes conflict. Thinks he wants to do mediation and conflict resolution. And there's a program in Minnesota that was offered by Hamline University, and it was an alternative dispute resolution. So We packed up everything. We moved to Minnesota, and it was a great experience. They are such happy people. And what was amazing to me is that all winter long, they're kind of indoors. They get a little bit of a spring, and then the mosquitoes come out in the summer, and they're kind of indoors again. But they are very happy people. Anyways, it was fun to be in Minnesota. There, I joined the I started working, I applied again, and got with the Associated Builders and Contractors. And were a staff of 8, and I was the membership director for them. The goal for this organization was to represent non-union contractors, and they'd call them merit shop contractors. And so I would drive around the state as the membership director, and I would talk to them, find out what was going on, how could I help them connect, what programs, what things were the issues with them, what stuff with regulation, with OSHA, all this kind of stuff that we would, figure out, and then I would help the staff realize what programming or what issues needed to happen for it. So I really enjoyed my time there. We were there for 3 years for law school, and then we had another child, another girl. And that was in Minnesota. Now, at the time, my husband was graduating, and the goal was, I was so excited to be a stay-at-home mom, and we were moving to Utah. So, moved to Utah, and I had big plans. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom, refinish furniture. My kids were going to be really great readers at an early age. I had these great plans for them. And then I realized that being a stay-at-home mom is the hardest job ever. Some people ask me, they say, how do you work and are you a mom at the same time? And you have to know, and you won't know this unless you do it, but being a stay-at-home mom full-time is the hardest job. And the reason is it's Groundhog Day every day, and you are pulling up emotionally like, I'm going to figure this out today, and you've got these people that are little and they want to do their things, and the minutes go by so slow, and you are just waiting for lunch, and then you do it all over again. And so literally, when my husband would come home at night, I was like, I have got to get out of here. Like, it was really, really hard for me, that transition of being a full-time mom. So I started getting involved in a lot of different things. I got a little note pinned to my mailbox that said, hey, we're looking for a secretary for the Canyon Rim Community Council. And I was like, okay, I'll sign up. I'm there. So I started seeing what issues were there in the community, started seeing what I could do to help. And one of the things that I did, we did stuff with planning and zoning. We did issues, a lot of different things, but one of the things I really enjoyed was how to develop a community identity. At this time, Mill Creek was not a city. We were unincorporated in Salt Lake County, which meant that our main government was the county government. And so I started wanting to develop this identity, and that it was really important to me that my kids and people around me, and there were 65,000 residents in this unincorporated area, so it was a pretty big city, or non-city actually. And I wanted them to feel this identity and this connection to their community. And so I thought by doing that, we are so close to the canyons that we would do this venture out, which was a festival that was about getting people exposure to new ideas in outdoor recreation. And so I thought, the reason I ski is because my family skied, and I thought, these are the reasons I've connected into these different things in my life. And if you have exposure, is that how you get in? So bringing clubs and different groups there so people know the gateway to getting into new activities. That was kind of the impetus for that. And it has grown since then. So we've been doing this for 12 years. It started as a one-day festival, and now throughout the summer, we do 10 shows. We do a lot of different things. And it's a real fun part of the community and our identity. So as I was doing this year, I started volunteering, starting a festival, helping out the community. I got a call back from my firm, Foxley Pignanelli, and they said, Aimee, we want to put a bid in for managing a trade association. Would you be part of this with us? And so I said, yep, let's do it. And we got the bid, and we did the Utah Association of Financial Services. With this organization, so there was now a staff of 3, the 2 lobbyists and myself. You can think about who did the majority of the management. That was me, yes. But anyway, so this group represents industrial banks. Industrial banks are a unique thing in Utah. And they are, BMW has an industrial bank, Pitney Bowes has a bank, Sallie Mae has a bank, and these are big corporate parent companies that have these banks that are based here in Salt Lake. Does anybody work for Enterbank USA? There's a call center down here. Anyway, that's an industrial bank as well. So I started working for the financial industry, and we started, doing our advocacy for them. And basically, what that meant is working on the state level with the legislatures to make sure everything is, for this industry, that it works for the industry, and then also on the regulatory front with the Department of Financial Institutions, watching those issues. And then we became very clear that we needed to deal with issues on the national level. Walmart wanted to have an industrial bank, and so there became some issues with unions not wanting them to have an industrial bank and community bankers feeling like they would get pushed out. And they didn't really understand the industrial bank model. Oh, I should have backed up. I'm going to back up right now. So when they told me to start on as this a new association, I formed my own entity because one of the things that was important to me is having flexibility as a mother. So it's really hard to do an 8-to-5 job as a mother because what we do is we juggle all balls at all times, at all things. And so that structure, I feel like, doesn't really work for a mom. And so I need to be able to do my job here, take a break, go do this, and do it at night. And I need to be helped all the time and all the hours, and there's no restrictions on me of where I need to be. And so I started a company called 5 Stone, and I started as an S corporation, was the model on it. And that has given me the ability to have the flexibility. So basically what I do is I subcontract out my life. So as 5 Stone, I take these different things, and then I find other partners that also subcontract out, and we do this work. So as the Utah Association of Financial Services did that for many years, and then we launched a new association called the National Association of Industrial Bankers, and that was to represent the interests of the banks on the national level. So then we hired a federal lobbyist, and we still work with them, and we team up on these issues and watch what's going on with banking. Another organization we hooked up with is the Utah Association of Private Sector Colleges and Universities. Those are the career colleges that are out there. So these are strong competitors, each one of them. You've got University of Phoenix, Eaglegate, Provo College, Stevens-Henniker, Ameritech. So they are all really strong competitors in this field, and they pick up the non-traditional students, usually the older students, the ones that need to do night classes solely. And this group came together, and we organized them under this really long title. And just so you know, the acronym for it is UAPSCU. Yeah, okay. Anyway, I didn't pick the name, the national group did. But anyway, so what happens on a lot of these organizations is there's a a federal group that exists, and then they do charters that are per state. And so this is one of the charters that was organized and that we represent their interests on the state level. The other organization I do work for is the Utah League of City and Towns. So what they do is they have all the different mayors and all of the city managers, everybody that's in these offices at the different cities and towns across the state of Utah, they belong to this association. They have a staff of 10, and they've asked me, what I do for them is I do their major events, their annual meetings, all those kind of things. So I do a lot of event planning for this organization. Then I, because of my connections with banking, I contract with the University of Utah. There's a program called LaSonde up there, and one of their programs under there is the Center for Innovation in Banking and Financial Services. Now, again, you might be asking yourself, these names, like, they need to be worked over. I would totally agree. That one just does not roll off your tongue. But anyways, what the goal on this one is for the dual banking system. So it's a research. The funding goes to getting research done that protects the dual banking, meaning the state charter banking system and the federal, that we think both works really well, and how do we get studies and information out there to protect that. So that's what the center is for, and then also to create innovation, get students engaged in banking and financial services as a career. So then as part of this, you start getting on boards, like you start getting on different things that become interesting to you. So I serve on the Bennion Center. I'm the chair this year for the Bennion Center. It's a community service organization, and the students do different things fall breaks. They do all these different fun activities about giving service. I still do venture out, and we do all the different shows I talked to you about. We launched the Labeled Film Festival, which was to reduce the stigma around mental illness. Salt Lake Education Foundation is an organization that helps the kids in that school district get dental care and different things that they might need. And then the Mountain West Small Business Finance, they do small business loans, SBA loans, to organizations. And so all of those are a same thing, you guys. It's like association groups, getting people together. It's the same model over and over and over again. In the meantime, from all that, had 2 more girls. Okay, so now we're going to kind of shift the focus, and I'm going to tell you more. So that was the kind of background. I mean, any questions? Taking a break.
So can you?
Yeah.
You say you subcontract your time.
Mm-hmm.
Just explain that a little bit.
Well, how I mean, it's just contracting it out, right? So what I kind of go into each organization, right, and they take one of my services of association management. Sometimes they take the whole thing, right? They take from bookkeeping to communications to management to all this kind of stuff. They take the whole package, and I do that. Then with other clients, like the Utah League of Cities and Towns, I contract out my time, and then I actually get other mothers to come in and subcontract out that contract. Does that make sense? So, for example, the Utah League of Cities and Towns, we just did a big convention. I know there's this wonderful woman. She wants flexibility. She wants this kind of stuff. And so I subcontracted with her my contract, right? That's what you meant. And so that's my model is as I find projects, I just find really good people that want to work on them, but the big key thing for that is flexibility. Does that answer it? Okay. Okay, so associations. So we're going to go through these different points. What is an association? Types of associations, purposes of associations, different roles in associations, and powers of associations. Okay, so one thing you should know is, would you think there was an association for what? Associations, and there's multiple, right? It never stops. They all wrap up into these holes. So this is one group, and this is a lot of the information from ASAE. What's interesting about that is that, I never got a certificate from this organization. You can get certificates in careers, and they, say that you have the skills and qualities to be an executive director. So some people do go into this without, a degree, and so they have a whole training program for that. But they are the main national group for that of associations. So just as a definition, and this is actually ironically important, but the IRS says in general, an association is a group of persons banded together for a specific purpose. There are antitrust laws. So for example, let's say you two had an interest and you both were in competing businesses and you both wanted the same legislation or the same regulatory reform. If you got together and you started talking about that, you started colluding, that would be against the law. That would be in violation of antitrust. But if you come under an association, if you come under a group that is formed, you can do whatever you would like as that group, as that special interest. You can talk, you can see what would be best for the industry, you can do all those kind of things. And so you do have to form under an association to get that benefit and file that way. So there's these different things that are elements.
Is that a question of transparency? Like, because you formed an association, there's now paperwork and a record that you're meeting and sort of working together?
Yeah, and it doesn't mean, though, the transparency that you have to reveal your minutes or anything like that. But what you are done is you've developed a board of a board of directors. You develop your governance within there. You file bylaws. You file all this different paperwork to recognize yourself as an entity. And then if you want to get a lobbyist, that lobbyist has to file with the state or whatever, the federal government, that they are representing you as an association. So it's a way for people to track who is doing what, how are they being involved, and that's kind of the transparency that comes on that end. But in terms of what they're talking about in the minutes, the board of directors of the membership is the only one that could see that data or information. It's not like that is open for public record at all. So it keeps the industry safe, whatever they're trying to do, but then also gives that transparency because they have to be recorded on the state level, the federal level, wherever they're going to be doing business. They are nonprofits, but there are also different distinctions. So there are 501c3s. Are you familiar with that terminology? Okay, that is purely a nonprofit, a church. Those groups are that. We fall under, when it has some lobbying capabilities in it, it's a 501c6. And there's also a 501c8. There's different distinctions that let them go to something different. So, you guys probably recently saw when the church was, there was a question whether they were going to lose status as a 501c3 because they were doing lobbying, or they were talking about if they were doing government. That was the debate, if they were doing this or not. And in the 501c3 space, you cannot do that. In the 501c6 space, you can. You can use purposes for and allocate purposes of advocacy. So how big is this industry? And this was in 2013, is 66,985 trade and professional associations. That is a lot of groups. And those are the ones that are, actively moving. Then there's 1 million charitable organizations. And 9 out of 10 adults belong to one association throughout their life. So it is very active. Next thing are the types of associations. Associations provide services such as education, political advocacy, help their members network and share knowledge, and build public awareness for a cause. This is so the same. That's why I'm saying when it's the formula, you just keep plugging in the different cause, the different interest of what that organization is, but they all kind of want the same thing. Some people want more government relations. Some people want more education. Associations determine what levels they want each of those to hit, but that's kind of where they go. Trade association. So the different kinds. The trade association is so there's 3 different types. And the trade association is where an entity, a company, is belonging to that organization. So the example of the Kerr colleges or my banks, the person that pays the membership dues is not the individual, it's the company is belonging to this trade association. And the goal of that is that they are protecting their trade, they're watching after their trade, they're seeing what's going on with their trade. And so it is companies that are directly involved with that. The next one is a professional association. Professional associations are individual. So you're a CPA, you join your group. So are you an individual with your political? Yes. So he pays Quinn pays membership dues directly to them to be part of this society, to be part of this group. Some of these groups are unique, and people they have to belong. So an association is as powerful as these individuals are kind of forced to belong. Because what can happen in associations is a company can say, all these people have joined, well, I'm not going to join. They're representing my interests. I don't have to pay money into that, right? And if they don't care if they're have a seat at the table, then fine. But everyone else is kind of carrying their water for them. When you go to a professional association, you have to have a hook, because usually people don't want to do it. So what's your hook? What's your hook for yours?
The annual conference and the journals that they publish.
Access to information.
I need the journals, and I need to go to the conference every year.
Yeah, and making those connections. And so that's the hook for them. So some of these professions, like specifically CPA and a law, for example, in the law, they have the Bar Association. And you have to be a good member of the bar to actually even practice. So it's a pretty good gig, because people all have to pay their bar dues to be part of the attorney process. And what the bar then says is, look, we will regulate ourselves. So the state likes this because the state doesn't want to be the regulator. They don't want to go in and say, are you doing it? Are you complying? Are you doing this? Blah, blah, blah. So if there is something, if an attorney is poor and doing bad, they have a whole ethics division that somebody comes in, they have like their own little mini trials for their own professions and say, you're out because you did X, Y, and Z. You lost your bar license, which means you can't practice in the state. So associations have levels of power over people professionally, or they don't, So everyone is looking for their hook. Obviously, the most powerful ones are if it's like you have to pay this to get your, to even do your profession. That obviously is very powerful. Other things like CPAs are doing credit hours. they have to comply for that. So whenever you're looking at associations, if you are ever, if this is a job opportunity that comes over, sometimes it's hard to be part of an association where there is not a flowing stream of money, because you spend your entire time trying to find that stream of money. And that is not very fun, because you never do what you really wanted to do. And so these structures that are set up when you look at an organization, find out, that's why charitable organizations are sometimes quite hard, is because you're spending so much time trying to draw in the dollars so that you can actually do the purpose. And that jumps us to the charitable associations. With these associations, they're easy. They're not hard to get. I mean, you apply for them. It takes probably about 6 months for the IRS to give you this distinction if you want to be a charity or whatever. If you're under $30,000 a year, you file a postcard every year so that you stay active in that. If you make money over that, you start filing other tax returns that would be required on that. But what's interesting about this is that it is a hard thing with the charitable things, because you're always trying to raise money, and that becomes an issue. Any questions on those distinctions? So you've just, you got the individual, corporation, and then the nonprofit status. Okay, purpose of associations. Again, the same thing. Associations play a vital role in enriching communities and creating positive change around the world. Associations are able to address numerous social concerns and enhance our collective quality of life. I believe this is very true. And that's what gets me so excited about this. As I said, my degree was in public policy, and at the end of my public policy career, my schooling here, I realized I didn't really want to be an analyst at all, and I wouldn't be very good at it at all. I was more on the emotional side of things. I was more in the idea of, how do I push things, how do I make connections among people and move policy forward, in some ways in a more emotional level. And so there's different ways each association does it, but I really enjoy taking your group, putting them together, putting the partnerships together, the players together, and seeing what comes out and pushing for that. And I think, you just have to be down on K Street or in D.C. I mean, you're seeing like association after association. That is what's pushing on this. This is what's driving a lot of Washington. So again, these are the three things. When I said you can plug and play each association, this is what you're doing. They either want education, they want training, they have to have some certificates, or they want to learn what's going on with trends. The trend that is happening with associations, though, is that people are so busy and there's stuff online. There are more webinars that are happening. There are more things that are going on that way. For training and people getting together. Before, people really did have to get together to kind of find out what new was happening, but that is not occurring anymore. So sometimes education, unless it's forced, is not as popular as an item. Advocacy is very popular. So that's why I've worked with Foxley and Pignanelli, 2 lobbyists, and then we work with the Eris Group federally. And what that is it teams you up. It's this insurance policy. It's plugging it in. And the thing that's hard is if you did your own government relations for your association, what's challenging is you're trying to work with all lawmakers. You're trying to make your point there. And so what we have found is more successful to team up with seasoned lobbyists because their influence is so much greater. What people don't understand on the lobbying front is, let's just say a company is going to make a contribution to a candidate, okay? The typical on the state level, a big contribution from a company is $1,000. You're usually about $250, $500. So a company is giving that to a state, legislator, and that's great money to help with the campaign. But then what happens with the lobbyist is having all these different clients. So when they go and represent 40 organizations that are all spending $250 for that candidate, do you see how the candidate is more interested in listening to that lobbyist? Do you see how the numbers work differently? If you were only saying, oh, here's my I'm the government relations director for this association. I'm coming to you with my $250 check. When I need to have an issue, I want to make sure you come out and you talk to me so I can inform you about what's going on. That's great. But when somebody is bringing other interests, even though they're only talking, the lobbyist is only talking on that one key issue, they are bringing a lot more weight with them. They're bringing a lot more power with them. And so that is where we've teamed up, and you know, work with, you know, a strong government relations firm, and that is actually very important. This is also important for the state regulators. What's ironic is the state regulators, not ironic, it makes a lot of sense. They don't want to deal with all the different career colleges, for example. Like, there's a new code, there's a new thing, I want to see what you think about it, and they're calling all of the different groups, right? If you're a state regulator, you want to call an association that is organized, that is representing the group as a whole. So oftentimes when we're with regulators, they're like, they want an association desperately, because it makes their job so much easier to interact with the industry. Now, it doesn't mean that they cave in or whatever, but they need to open those lines of communication, and association is really great with that. So on the regulatory front, they are key. And then the last one is networking. And the networking is interesting because you do have to show up. This is something you can't text you have to show up to get that benefit. And I can tell you it totally works. The way that people watch after each other that are engaged. So whatever profession you guys go into, my recommendation is for you to get involved, whatever association would fill in that need. And what happens is you become this industry expert. It becomes job security, because as you leave and you start working on these committees and these associations, and you're like, well, what am I doing here? Well, I have seen things where it lets people leapfrog from one thing to another. And people start watching after each other, and they become kind of this industry family. And so it is a unique thing. The other thing is you are also saying you're giving back to whatever your expertise is, whatever your field is. Last thing is, two more things, different roles in associations. And I think this is this is the fun part. And so if you can serve as a board of directors if you become involved in whatever. So you don't have to be part of an association if you are going to be joining something. So if Quinn wants to be part of the board of directors of his organization, he can kind of say, hey, I want to be involved, and get involved that way. They're making decisions for the group. The management team, the staff, is working with the board of directors, but the board of directors is what makes decisions for these organizations. Administrative, that's self-explanatory, but communications, marketing, social media, each of these associations are like mini businesses. They all need these skills. Government relations, if people do want to get into lobbying, I think associations are a great way to do it. Because, you're starting out, and I make this joke, but it's so easy to become a lobbyist. It's like so easy. So you have to file with the state, and then you just have a client that wants to pay you. That's it. And they want to keep paying you year after year. But that's how you become a lobbyist. But with government relations, what happens if you're on association, you start working that issue, you become really good at healthcare or education or whatever. You start developing these expertise under the association. And then as you start doing that, then people leave these associations and they start going out and doing lobbying or whatever. They start picking up multiple clients. But that is a key way, an easy way to get into it, and that they're representing the group. Marketing, membership. I think membership is really fun because it's that real help where you find out what the member needs, what they're doing, and doing the programming. I really enjoyed that part. Oh, I put marketing up there twice because it's that important. Education, getting things together for the different programming, the different requirements that are needed. Fundraising, that is not my favorite. Some people really, really like that. And then managing volunteers. That is super rewarding, and there's people that are doing that full time. And then events, that is actually where I've kind of developed more of a niche, is in the event planning stage, and these different things and bringing people together, and I find a lot of enjoyment that way. Oops. Sorry, this was a little ticker. Okay, powers of association. So again, if you are in the political science realm, if you want to impact public policy, if you want to have something that you're interested in, this is the way you can totally do it. This is the way to get in. A lot of people want, run for office, or I don't know. Out of curiosity, just throw out a few of you guys, what interests you feel like you want to go into, what fields? Does anyone know where they want to go with their degree? Yeah.
Civic engagement.
Okay, what else? Yeah. Law, great. Now, do you want to go into law and then work for a government agency on public policy, or do you want to do law?
I just think I'd want to be like a civil lawyer.
Okay, great. What other professions are you guys doing with your degree? Where's your end game? Yeah.
I'd like to be a district attorney.
Okay. How many people want to go into the legal field? All right, more field. Okay, great. And so, I mean, I'm, preaching to the choir here. You guys know this, but that's obviously a way to create public policy is through the law. But I do like that lawyers and all these people can kind of do these things. But I'm telling you, when you get like a room full of passionate constituents, you can move things that lawyers cannot move. Am I right? And so you impact public policy. And so that is the power of it going their way. Professional development, again, we talked about this with being a lawyer or going into any different fields. That's what you get from that. And then those connections, which are super powerful and going forward. When I look back, even preparing this presentation, looking back at these funny connections through life of who you meet and where it leads and how you're stationed and this thing, you start seeing this, almost this string of how you get there. And I think it's hard because as you are starting, you're not seeing where you're going. But I do believe that as you start going where things that you are impassioned by, you're excited about, it will just start leading to other things, and then you will start seeing the direction. I don't know if I was not really thinking I was going into association management. It just happened. It was weird how I just started, those are the jobs that I just got interested in. I was just moving, I was looking for any job in Connecticut and Minnesota. I wasn't like, I want to do association management. But you kind of get drawn to these different things that you're, ironically, you do. And then what's interesting from that is I also started realizing that I love event planning, and I start connecting it that way within the association management. And so if anyone say if I was an event planner, I'm like, no, I am not an event planner. Like, I would never do a wedding in a million years, ever, except for my daughters, and I'm hoping they're going to elope. Anyway, but bringing people together and seeing that synergy is very exciting for me. And so as you kind of see these different things that are going to come forward, you'll do that. So I don't know if there's any other thing, I really believe that these associations can help you in your career. I believe that they can make those connections for you going forward. I think they're super fun. I think they're super diverse and exciting that way. Any questions about it? I'm just curious, is anyone more excited about associations than when they walked in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I do think they're fun. So other things that you want to know about them? Yeah.
How would you recommend we get started?
Sure. So one thing that did help me with getting my public policy degree is I kind of chose an area. It was social and family policy. I took a lot of social work classes, which when you're in such a field of political science, you're kind of just dealing in this area. But it's so fascinating when you start dealing with experts in a whole different realm. So when I'd go to these social work classes, I would hear what they're hearing, what their passion is and such. And it made me very excited about that realm. When I did the Labeled Film Festival, there was very much a vein of me feeling impassioned by what I had learned from that area. So I think if you're with blinders on different areas and you don't know what the issues are, that's a problem. And so my recommendation to you would be, if there's stuff that's interesting to you, really try to delve into that industry or that idea or what's going on, who are those people, and hearing what they have to say. Does that make sense? Okay, what I said, yeah.
How do you get familiar with associations? Because I know that one thing when you're young and you're going into things like nonprofits or things like advocacy, you have a unique message, and at the same time your message really isn't that unique. And I guess what I'm saying is you have your vision, but you also need to make sure that you're partnering with people who have similar visions or you're joining onto their cause. where do we go to become familiar with what kind of groups and associations exist around us?
Yeah, and it used to be a lot harder to find those groups, but now with obviously being online, groups can form. I think where you would be struggling is which is the right group to be part of, right? Because anyone can join a Facebook group or whatever. They can do these things as quick as they can. I think you are looking honestly for a funding source, like where is stuff going on, to know if it's stable. And the thing is associations or anything like any nonprofit would run you as far as you will go. And you need to decide what you're willing to give and in that realm. But I think, ironically, in Utah, associations aren't as strong as they are in other parts of the country. So there are states, Minnesota was one of them, where associations were really, really big. In Utah, I think that there's this culture like, well, that's my kind of day life. And I think most people give more time to the church, and so they kind of view that almost as their professional association in a way. That's where extra time goes. And I don't think that they view associations, they're a little harder here in Utah. They're not as organized. And so, but then if you go into Washington, they are so organized. They're so corporate. And so I think in terms of finding what, again, your interest is, looking at the organization, how it's structured, and then another real big tell is who is on the board of directors. Find out who's leading this group. Are they, they are going to tell you a lot about the organization. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if you search my name, my number pops up in multiple places. If there's any questions that you have, or if there is a group that you're interested in, I can give you as much information as I have, but there are leads everywhere. I mean, you just have to pick up the phone and call. I do find it super rewarding. There are times where I'm jealous of the supermarket checkout lady, and I'm like, you just leave. Like, you leave your job and you are done, and you check out with your card and you are done for the day. That is like not my world. My world is always going. I'm always thinking about stuff, and it's never, ever done because there's always something coming on. And that can be exhausting, but I'm telling you, my time, my days, everything flies by so fast. And I do find a lot of reward in what I do and what I give back. And so I like that a lot. So, do you guys care about salaries? No one? You care about?
Ironic with what I said I wanted to go into.
So Utah is not great for association executives. You're probably, if you are at the top of an association, you're running. Certain associations are running be about $80K to $100 if you're the executive director. If you're running a more powerful association, like a Utah Bankers Association or whatever, you're probably up at $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. So there's associations that get more. If you're in the healthcare, if it's more specific, more tailored, more unique, harder, you get paid better for it. In the charitable work, you are probably, if you're the executive director or whatever, you're at 60 to 80K. What I have done is pulled a lot of stuff collectively, and then I hire things out. So it works out really well for me, but I pull a lot of things together. So anyway, back in DC and such, they're making, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 a year for executive director.
Is it fair to say that you handle work for a lot of entities that don't have a full-time staff?
Mm-hmm.
You're sort of the staff.
So yes.
Your cadre of employees.
Yep.
You are the full-time staff for these smaller associations.
Yeah. So we kind of do that economies of scale, and it makes it a lot easier because of technology lets us do that. That would never have been able before the internet. If you're sending out a meeting notice, everyone's writing out hand letters, they're mailing it, their registrations are coming back. You see, we move so much faster, and there's so many tools out there organizing it. So yes, it makes us really streamlined, really fast. So, all right, any other questions? Yeah.
What's the most important thing we can be doing now to prepare for a career in associations?
So my advice for all people is if you are somebody that other people like to be around, you are totally going to succeed. That is it. If people can enjoy being with you from all these things, that you are going to be successful no matter what you do. If people enjoy being around you, talking to you, that you're a listener, you just don't talk back at them. Even from table, this is where I tell my kids, I'm going too deep. It's like, even table manners. Like, if it's gross to eat with somebody, you don't want to be around them, that's a problem. So all these little things, if people want to be around you and they enjoy your company, you are totally going to be successful. In association management, that is totally because it's a service organization. It is people. And so if you want to be around people, that is where you need to go. That's great. Oh, I should give one other hint that I think is actually really good if you want to go into lobbying or association management is legislative research. The Utah, up at the Capitol, ledge research, if you learn that skill, if you learn how to process and make bills and such, that is very, very helpful. So if that's something down there, that's another position or internship or whatever to try to get in there, that would benefit you a lot.
This is the Office of Legislative Research and General Counsel.
Correct.
In Utah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So learning what they do and how they do it.
Learning how they run bills, learning how your language, all of those different kinds of things really would help out too. So there's one other hot tip. Okay. So any other things, and we'll let our tambourine player head out, our saxophonist. But maybe do both at the same time, tambourine and saxophone.
I will be doing both.
All right, thanks everyone.